y'all? It's Todd with Chasing Tail MD. Thanks for clicking on the video and joining me today. Today I wanted to talk about a story of the buck that I call Towers. And if you clicked on the thumbnail, you probably know why I called him that. He's got some crazy long brow tines. Before I jump into it, I don't normally do this at the beginning, but if you could like and maybe subscribe if you haven't already, I really appreciate it. It'll help me spread my content and just bring these videos to you guys. I enjoy doing it and I hope you enjoy watching. Also, if you stick around to the end, I might show a few of the big bucks that I'm hunting this year, my top 2 targets. So, little sneak peek. Maybe I can catch up with one of them and be bringing you guys another video. I appreciate it. Let's get into the story of Towers. So this starts last year. Property that I door knocked on in August of 23. Got permission and hunted there for pretty much the whole season. And Towers was not on my radar whatsoever. He actually did not show up until December 26th, I believe it was, at the very end of the season, with a month to go. But he had his head down. I got like 4 pictures of him or so, but I really couldn't tell what he was. You could tell he was wide. You could tell he had some pretty long brow tines, and it was 6-point, and that was about it. He ended up coming back on the very last day of the season, January 31st, and he gave me some good pictures this time. You could really tell what he was. He had 7 or 8 inch brow tines, just a real big 6-pointer. He looked like a decently mature deer. I guess it'd be either 3 or 4. I was leaning towards 4. Pretty big head and everything. But with it being the last day and him showing up in the middle of the night, I figured there was pretty much no chance I would run into him. And he did not show up in daylight that night. I ended up harvesting a doe at another one of my spots. But he showed up around like 9 p.m. I think that night. So would have never been able to get him. I was hoping he might stick around for this year. And obviously that's exactly what he did. So fast forward to this year. June, few pretty nice bucks are showing up. Still no sign of Towers, and all of a sudden, June 23rd, I got the first picture. He was kind of always in the back of my mind. I wasn't really banking on him being there, but him coming back was certainly a pleasant surprise. You could see the brows; you'd tell right away that it was him. It looked like he had put on some width. His brows were about the same, maybe about an inch longer. Same awesome shape. Got the S curve to him. But he was unmistakable. So he was back June 23rd, and that's where the story of Towers began this year. So after the first sighting of him on June 23rd, he ended up coming back again in like early mid-July, somewhere around that like 10th and 12th, I think it was. And you could see he had put on an extra tine. He was going to be a 7-point this year. I didn't think he was going to even out and be an 8, and he did not. But you could really start to tell just how wide he was, and he had a very large body. He was making a lot of the other bucks in there look pretty small. So it's definitely one of the bucks that was going to be towards the top of the hit list, especially with those brow tines. I don't know about you all, but I'm a sucker for long brow tines. So super excited nonetheless. I knew he was definitely going to be a shooter. It looked like he had put on a decent amount of size, and I was excited to see how he's going to progress throughout the summer. All right, so now August is here, and he's sticking around. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, he was a late season deer. Maybe he's only here for the summer, late season, and, he'll be gone before he sheds his velvet. But he was sticking around, and he looked really good. I started to get some real good pictures of him, pretty much fully grown, and he was super impressive. I guessed him to be over 20 inches inside, which turned out to be correct. And with the huge brow tines and everything, just a giant frame on that deer. It was cool to watch him grow, and I was super excited leading up the season. Still, like I said though, in the back of my mind, I was honestly expecting him to leave before I would ever have a crack at him. So fast forward to September 4th, 2 days before season opener, and Towers is still there. At this point, I'm starting to get excited. I think it might actually, be a possibility for me to get on this deer this year. So getting really excited. The only thing that was still, scaring me a little bit, he's still holding his velvet. So I was hoping that once he shed it out, he would not be leaving. And that ended up being the case. He came back, he's fully shed it out of velvet, and he's still there. Still in the middle of the night, but it's very encouraging to see him still around. So as fall progresses on and we get further into September and October, he starts getting closer and closer to daylight. He's an hour or 2 there, hour or 2 here. And I'm starting to get encouraged. I'm thinking, man, I might actually have a chance of getting on this deer. And we had a super terrible stretch of weather, like 2 weeks straight of just east winds and rain. I didn't even bother changing batteries or anything, and I didn't know if he was there. So that passed. I got out some corn, I switched the batteries and tried to get back on him, and right away he was back. So super excited. I knew there was still a chance, and he was still doing that, hour or two from shooting light, and I was super encouraged. So this is an 80-acre property, and I have one other camera that I run. It's a Spy Point, and I hadn't been paying for the data plan. I just was running the free 100 photos and then letting the SD card save the rest. And I hadn't pulled the card for like 2 months. So I had gotten my free 100 photos, but I still had like 20 to 25 days worth of pictures that I, just hadn't seen. So I go and pull the card, and boom, there it is. A week before my dad ended up catching up with him, he is on camera, last light, but he was in shooting light and he was on my property. So it was super exciting, and I knew at this point that it was time to go all in. So the week of the 10th, October 10th is the day that my dad harvested this buck. And the week leading up, so Monday we had some pretty good weather. It wasn't a crazy cold front or anything coming through, but it was just good weather. I hunted him on Monday, and I believe that was the 7th. No encounters, but he did come in about an hour after I got down, which, it stunk, but it was encouraging to see he was still around. And then Wednesday, the 9th, we started to, it was like the front end of a front, and there was going to be a pretty good temperature drop the next day, around like 9 or 10 degrees. And he showed up at 7:40 p.m., which was only about 35 minutes from shooting light. That was the closest he had ever been outside of the daylight photo that I got of him. And I knew I needed to get in the tree the next day with the good weather coming. But I couldn't make it out, of course. Family obligations, I had to be a dad. My dad had just driven home from Hatfield-McCoy, 8-hour drive, and he was exhausted. But I called him up and I begged him and pleaded with him to go get in the tree stand, and told him there was a really good chance that he was going to run into that buck tonight. He finally agreed. He went out there, got in the tree a little bit late, best he could do, and at the last light, he came out with 2 or 3 of the other bucks that he always has been running with, and my dad made it happen. He was standing at 20 yards. He said he shot. The other 2 bucks ran the other direction. I think it was 3, whatever. They ran the other direction, and Towers ran further onto the property that we have permission on, and 30 yards or so, he said he just stopped hearing any noise, and he wasn't sure what had happened. So my dad gets down, goes over to the arrow after about 30 minutes, goes over to the arrow, checks it out. It's got decent blood on it. Looks like it's got a little bit of bubbles, but it's not real thick blood, not real coated on the arrow. So he gets his light, he starts tracking a little bit, and all of a sudden he shines his light, and Towers picks his head up and looks at him at 30 yards, right where he heard him stop running. So that was a little bit exhilarating, I guess, and he could not get up though. He was down for the count. It took him a little bit to expire, I think, because he hit him in the back of the lungs. He caught both lungs, but the shot was a little far back. It was right at last light, pretty much at shooting light. So tough for him to see perfectly, but he felt confident that he could make a good shot, and obviously he did, just a touch back. So that's the story of Towers. I hope you enjoy. We got him back. I scored him up. His brow tine on the left was 8 1/8, and the other was 8 6/8, almost 9-inch brow tines. His inside spread was 20 3/8, so super wide deer. My dad's second widest deer ever, and he ended up as a 7-point, grossing at 128 1/8. So super nice 7-point, super unique buck. It was very exciting to get one down, before the rut starts kicking in and, you're chasing your tail half the time. But I hope you enjoyed the story today. Like I said, as I promised, if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. But here's a sneak peek of the other 2 bucks that I'll be hunting. Number 1 target, Captain, 11-point buck. He just came back recently. He snapped off his one inline tine, so now he's a 10-point. But I'm thinking he's around like 140 class, 4.5-year-old. And the other one I don't have a name for. I'm going to think of something before I start hunting him real hard here in the rut. But I actually thought he didn't make it last year. I had pictures of him 2 years ago. I had an encounter with him as a 2-year-old. Last year he came back, he was there, I didn't hunt him at all. Came back as like 115-inch 7-point, made a really big jump. And this year he is back again as an 8-point, and he's very impressive. He made another huge jump, which usually doesn't happen, but he did 2 back to back. He looks like he's mid to upper 130s as a mainframe 8-point with a tiny little split brow. So be super excited to catch up with either one of those deer. I still got several deer that I'm hoping will come back from last year that were rut bucks, and the targets might change, but I've got several other targets. I'm just showing you my top 2 right now. Maybe I'll come out with a target video here as we heat up and get further into the season. Late October is pretty much full swing of things. So like I said at the beginning, like and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you watching today, and happy hunting.